So hi guys, welcome to yet another video editorial with PrepBytes. In today's video editorial, I would be discussing the problem Cross That Bridge of the February 2021 Marathon. And let's get started with the problem statement. Here, Priya knows about a bridge of length n. Some parts of it are colored in X color and some in Y color. So parallelly, I would be noting down the important points for you to understand it. So the first important point here is bridge is colored with both X and Y. Okay. She can only cross the bridge if it is colored only in X or Y. Okay, so this means she can only cross the bridge if the bridge is colored with a single color, either X or Y. Now, in one step, she can change any segment of consecutive same colors. After changing the color of the segment, the color X becomes Y and vice versa. So, in one step, she can change any consecutive segment and she can change the color from X to Y or Y to X. And our task over here is to find the minimum number of steps to color the bridge in one color so that Priya can cross the bridge. Okay, fair enough. Going to the input format, the input format is the first line of the input contains t, which is the total number of test cases, and then first line of each test case contains a string s of n characters consisting of either x or y colors denoting the current state of the bridge. Okay, now the output format is like, for each test case we will have to output the minimum number of steps to color the bridge in one color, and the constraints are t can be from 1 to 10 and n can range from 1 to 10 power 5. And the input format is like, the first line is the total number of test cases and then the string which is denoting the color of the bridge. We have not taken n as input over here, you can see it. Okay, so let's move to the coding section and understand what exactly is the problem statement and also discuss the sample test cases. Okay, now before starting the discussion, I would be suggesting that let us call the consecutive colors as a band of colors. Okay, so any band of colors like XXXX can be called as a band of X, and any band of Y such that YYYY can be called as a band of Y. So now our task which is required in the problem statement boils down to calculate the minimum number of bands of X or the minimum number of bands of Y. What was our task? Our task was basically to color the bridge with one color, right? So how can I color the bridge in one color? By changing the color of each and every band in one step. I can change this particular band, right? And I can make it as XX in one step. So basically what was the problem and how we boiled out to this particular claim, that it is nothing but the minimum number of bands of X or the minimum number of bands of Y. Let us discuss the sample test case and understand this thing. Here in the sample test case, the number of bands of X you can see over here is, this is the first band and then this is the second band, and the number of bands of Y is 1, right? So as given in the problem, Priya can change only one band in one step, right? The color of one band can be changed to the other color. Basically, YY can be changed to XX in one step. So the minimum number of steps to color the bridge in one color would be nothing but the minimum number of bands, because those would be the bands which I would be changing color, right? Minimum number of bands of Y. If Y is having minimum number of bands, then I would be changing all the bands of Y to X, so that the total bridge would be of single color. Or if the number of bands of X is minimum, then I would be changing the all the colors in the bridge as X, right? So our task boils down to this particular statement. And how do we calculate the number of bands of X and the number of bands of Y? Okay, so here the answer is 1, because the bridge would be colored in X in like all the colors, right? Because number of bands of Y is 1, so YY would be changing to XX in our solution. Okay, so funda for solving. Basically now we will have to focus on calculating number of bands of X and number of bands of Y. So let's move to the funda. The funda is, let us have two counter variables, count X and count Y. and these counter variables is for counting the bands of x and y, the number of bands of x and y, right? Now it will increment whenever we find x or y in our string. Basically we would be traversing in our string, and whenever we find x, then I would be incrementing my count x, basically the first x and the first y. Not exactly for all x and y, but for the first x and y. Whenever we find the first x and first y of each and every band, and after that first x, I would be skipping my iterations till I get some other color, right? So the dry run is something like, if this is the input xx yy xx, so initially I am over here, okay? So now count x would be incremented. Cool. Now my iteration or the looping variable is now over here at the second x. Now I would have to skip this particular iteration because this is the second x, not the first x. So count x won't increment in this particular case. Now for the next case, when this is the string, then in the next iteration, this is my index, which is y, right? So now count y would be incremented. Count y is getting incremented. Why? Because this is my first y, right? So this way I would be calculating total number of bands. After that, after this iteration, my looping variable will come over here, and I will have to skip it because it is not the first y of that particular band. And then at this x, I will be incrementing my x, and then I would be skipping for these particular values. So that is for one band, my counter will get incremented only once, and then the remaining indices will be skipped. And our final answer would be nothing but minimum of count x and count y. Now let us write the pseudo code for better understanding, so that you would be able to write your code in any of your favorable language. Okay. So first of all, let me make these variables count x and count y, and let us initialize them with 0 initially. Now I would loop through the string for I equals to 0 till n minus 1. I would be checking if my s of I is equals x. If it is equals x, I would be incrementing my count x. Else I would be incrementing my count y. Now I would be having one character ch, which is storing the character at ith index, and I would be incrementing my I, and the condition is I must be less than n, and s of I is equals ch, and till s of I is equals to ch, I would be incrementing my I plus plus in order to skip the rest of the characters of the band. Basically what this is doing is that for these particular bands like this, I am incrementing my count x over here, and for these values my indices is getting incremented. Basically these indices are getting skipped, right? Okay, so this is the scenario. Basically I won't be incrementing my I over here, and finally I would be printing minimum of count x and count y. Okay, let us move to the C++ implementation. Okay, int main, and then I would be taking t for the test cases, and then the string as input, and int I and n is equals to s dot size, right? And then this for loop would run till I is less than n, and I won't be incrementing my I over here, but in the while loop which I explained in the pseudocode, when s of I is equals to x, then I would be incrementing. I would be having two counter variables as well, which is count x is equals to 0 and count y, which is equals to 0 again. Now if s of I is equals to x, then count x plus plus, else count y plus plus, and I would be having one character ch, which is storing the index at the character at ith index, and then while I is less than n and s of I is equals to ch. I would be ignoring all such indices when it is same as the previous one, so as to ignore the other indices of the band except the first one, right? Okay. Now finally I would be printing the minimum of count x and count y. Okay, let me add the free open lines and check if it is working cool for the sample input and output. Okay, let us compile this code. Let us run it now. Yeah, so one is the answer. Let me comment out these lines and submit over the PrepBytes platform. Okay, so you can see that we have got an AC over this solution. Thanks for watching this video and keep coding.